And welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus on this finally Friday, June 27th. Man, can you believe we're almost done with the month of June? Summer is just it always flies by way too fast. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki, along with our Ag Director Bridgette Readel. And Bridgette on the road again. You look like you're in the same spot, Bridgette.
Well, I think it's just because I have the same setup. But actually, I am in Summit, South Dakota. I am on my way to Watertown, South Dakota. I will be part of the South Dakota Cattlemen's and National Cattlemen's Association's event with stockmanship and stewardship. So we'll be down there talking with vets about really foreign diseases such as foot and mouth disease, New World screwworm. We're going to make sure to talk about careful handling with cattle in the area. And for those who are attending, they can get their beef quality assurance credits. Instead of having to worry about going to get them online, you can do them in person and have a chance to visit with leadership from both the national and the state level of South Dakota tonight. So for all of those who are listening from Watertown, see you soon.
Oh, man. Well, good for you. Good for you. And, the weather is going to cooperate for you. It's going to be a little hot down there, but and eventually you're going to see some stormy weather. But as long as you're back by later tonight, I think, or tomorrow, you should be okay. But we have storms in the forecast as we head into tonight. In fact, some of those are expected to be on the strong to severe side. We're looking at cloudy skies out there right now, and we're expecting those clouds to break here by mid-afternoon, allowing for a little sunshine to end the day. And temperatures should be in the 70s throughout much of the area. Some spots might touch 80 if you see enough sunshine, and winds out of the southeast at about 5 to 15. Now, tonight, we're in a slight risk for severe weather, and severe weather looks like a pretty good bet. It's going to start off in the north-central part of the state, probably close to dinner time, and then that is going to form a line of severe weather. That's the way it's looking right now, and push southeastward. Now, arrival time in the valley right around midnight, 1 a.m., and then that will race off into lakes country. So about a 3-hour window of severe weather across the area. Now, this isn't going to be a long-lasting event like our last system, but the main threat with this is going to be damaging winds and possibly some hail, but I think damaging winds is going to be the main threat. So unfortunately, over some of the same areas that got hit, have the opportunity of getting hit again tonight. Now, that's not a guarantee, but a lot of ingredients are there for very strong winds in excess of 60, 70 miles an hour. So something we'll keep an eye on. And again, the time frame on that between about midnight and 3 a.m. Then, as we head into the weekend, it's looking a little bit better. We're looking at warm and humid conditions on Saturday, mid-upper 80s, and then drier weather punches in on Sunday, but still warm with highs in the mid to upper 80s. Could see a few more storms Saturday night, but I think the majority of those are going to be to our south and east. And this weather is brought to you today by Progressive Ag Risk Management Specialists. So be weather aware tonight if you're going into lakes country, if you're going out camping or anything like that. Again, make sure to have some way to receive weather information, as you don't want to get stuck out in a tent, or, if you're in lakes country and you've got, 70 mile an hour plus winds heading your way.
Well, weirdly, right here at Summit, South Dakota, it's still 68 degrees. It's really pleasant. So I don't know where the break is going to happen, where I'm going to have a lot of difference in weather. But for the moment, I'm going to stick with what I've got. We'll see how it turns out in the end, though. And I will be coming home late tonight. I've got your phone number. I'll call you in advance, Dean. So okay. Sorry if I wake you.
I'll be up. It will be, and if we'll be on air live tonight if these conditions warrant. Which again, it looks like a halfway decent shot at seeing some severe winds with this as it pulls through. I hope I'm wrong.
Okay.
I hope I'm wrong. We don't need some of these same areas, Page, Hunter, to get hit again with strong winds. Just don't need it.
Yeah. No, Enderlin, I'm sure their recovery is still ongoing as well. The tiny town of Erie, they've also had plenty. So it's not our turn anymore. We took that one. Thanks, folks.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead.
No, I was going to say we're getting. I was just taking a look at some of our short-term models, and boy, it looked like this thing really what we call bows out. And when you get like a bow echo on the radar, that's signifying very strong winds, and it looks like it maximizes itself over lakes country. It looked like so. Not good news if you're going to be out in Lakes Country, but again, as it pushes through here, we still have that severe threat as well.
Well, we're going to see how things turn out for the rest of the day. Well, one thing that's a positive, and that is we want to give away a registration or a qualification, if you will, for the Great Grocery Giveaway. And Dean usually has a name for us.
I do.
That's a $10,000 grocery giveaway brought to us by Alsager Meats, Kingpins, and ND Estate Services.
So today's contestant to qualify, and again, you will have 9 minutes and 70 seconds to call, Kayla Volness of West Fargo. Kayla Volness of West Fargo, 701-293-9000. You have 9 minutes and 70 seconds to call to qualify, and our grand prize drawing will be on July 10th. That's coming up right around the corner. So again, Kayla Volness of West Fargo. If you know Kayla, shoot her a text. Say, hey, they just called your name. You better hurry up and call in to qualify. And who doesn't want, like you said, Bridgette, who doesn't want to qualify for $10,000 in groceries? Oh.
Yep. A year's worth of groceries, that's $800 a month. We are excited to see who our winner will be on July 10th at Kingpins. We need you to be there in person in order to win this $10,000 grand prize package. Very excited about it.
Oh boy! First I get a deep freeze. I'd have to buy a deep freeze, and then I'm getting a lot of meat and vacuum sealing that, and I'll be good to go for a while.
Okay, so based on all of us who have deep freezers and what we just went through this week, don't forget to buy a little generator. That's not part of your $10,000 grocery giveaway,
No.
but you're going to want to get your own generator. This is a backup plan.
That's right. So again, Kayla Volness of West Fargo. You have about 9 minutes left to call. Kayla Volness of West Fargo. And we've got a returning guest coming into the studio. Well, actually, he's in the studio today. I think everybody's well aware of who Daryl is. Daryl, welcome.
It's good to be back.
It's good to have you back. Boy, we're going to have to take a break here, but when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the storm that hit last week and how different that storm was and how it impacted people. So don't go anywhere. We'll have a what? Sorry, Bridgette.
That's not the only reason. That's not the
I
only reason I called Daryl.
Right.
This originally started because it's the 50th anniversary of the 1975 tornado and flood. So, guys, this is like the weather bonanza today. I'm going to go in the truck stop and get lunch. Let me know when you need
I was
me.
just going to say, we're going to be weather geeking out here coming up after the break. So don't go anywhere. If you have any questions for Daryl or myself or Bridgette, give us a call, 701-293-9000. We'll be right back.
All right, somebody find a bell to ring. We got a winner. Kayla is our qualifier for the $10,000 Great Grocery Giveaway. Kayla, what's the first thing on your shopping list when you get a chance to take the big prize after you qualified?
Well, if you ask my husband, it's probably T-bones or something.
There you go. That's a good
But
choice.
if I ask you, what are you going to say?
Well, if he's cooking them, I suppose I'll get him some T-bones. They're always good.
Well, we are looking forward to seeing you at Kingpins on July 10th, and you may be the person who walks away with $10,000 in groceries. We're very excited for you.
That would be awesome, I think. Thank you, guys.
No problem. Kayla, good luck. And like Bridgette said, we'll see you on the 10th.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.
All right, have a great weekend. Stay safe tonight.
You also.
All righty.
Yep, thanks.
All right, good deal.
One of the ways that we can stay safe is by making sure our technology is safe and up to date, and we do that by using techsupportfarm.com. Chris Sherman is making sure that all of your data is protected just as well as you want to be protecting yourself from potentially rough weather tonight. And I already have had several people reach out with questions about tonight, et cetera, but let's start with where we plan to, and that's the reason that I called Daryl is I have a farmer, Trigby Skolnis, said back in 1975, he had more than a little damage. The pictures he sent are from his front yard of his farm shop. He lost the shop and the house on that day, a lot of outbuildings, and a flood followed. So I was 2 in 1975. Anybody got the history on this? Daryl, maybe you've researched it and can share a little bit of the background of what happened.
I use 1975 in many of my presentations I give, especially when I'm dealing with water issues. I use 1975. And probably the thing of note climatologically is the storms from late June, early July of 1975 really in many ways set the bar as to how much water we can get here in a very short number of hours, say within one day. So, 1975, there's a tornado, probably Roger Jensen, famous gentleman for storm photography, got the picture of the tornado just to the northeast of Moorhead and Felton. It was very widely observed within Fargo-Moorhead. It was close enough. The ceilings were appropriate for that. That went through that area, but that was associated with a cluster of very slow-moving thunderstorms, and there was widespread 10 to 15 inches of rain fell that night in 2 areas, actually, which was odd. Just to the northeast of here, it fell associated with that tornado that we're referencing here, and also to the southwest of Fargo. So in some ways, Fargo got lucky, but all of that water to the southwest came here. And that night when it rained, and there was an unofficial report of 20 inches near Leonard, just to the southwest. And that was based in many ways just on how much water was in a pot, a bucket. And based on a number of scenarios, it might have been a smidge high, but really what's the difference between 18 and 20 inches of rain when you're getting to that point? But when you're thinking of the Cheyenne diversion in West Fargo, that idea in many ways started then, because so much of that water southwest of here came up to Cheyenne more than the red. So the red set the summer record that has not even really been touched since in Fargo. Massive flooding in Fargo, no doubt, but it was West Fargo that really took the brunt of that from the floodwaters as it moved up to the northeast from that event. And so we had the tornado, but then we had the very, very heavy rain. Right after that event, there was another event on July 1st and 2nd. This all really happened on June 28th, 29th. Then on July 1st and 2nd, there's another huge rain system with 10 plus inches of rain up around the Red Lakes towards Grand Forks in northwestern Minnesota. And then at that same time, there was what then was before the EF scale, it was the F4, went through southwestern North Dakota, sadly killed a 3-month-old baby through that. And that's a very famous, one of the strongest tornadoes that ever go through North Dakota. So we had 2 very large tornadoes, the most rain we've ever experienced in really 3 separate areas all over the course of 7 days here in North Dakota, northwestern Minnesota. So to say that that week was a crazy week of weather would be a big understatement, of course.
big understatement. For those who are watching, the photos that sparked this conversation that came to me from Trigby's Fullness of Averill, Minnesota are up on our screen. You can see them on Facebook, YouTube, and Acres TV. You can call us with questions on the JLA Insurance phone line, 701-293-9000. One of the questions that I did not get from the JLA Insurance phone line, Daryl, but that was texted to me was, does the tornado always come first and then the rainfall, or can it ever be in the reverse order?
I'm sure Dean would agree with me here. It's really rain first, but it really depends on where you're positioned within the storm, because you'd get a tornado and miss the main rainstorm. But in a classic supercell, you have the heavy rain core, you have the very large hail core, then you have the tornado core. But, it's every storm's different, but as a general rule, and a key word there is general rule, a lot of these supercells will move from the southwest to the northeast. So in turn, you would get the heavy rain core, the hail, then there would be the tornado if you were, say northeast of where it originally developed. We can tell you from just a week ago today that some of those storms did not follow that track, of course, because every situation is a little bit unique.
And speaking of last week's storm, Daryl, it was something that I haven't seen before, and I've been doing this for 30 years, where we'll just, for simplicity purposes, we basically had a hurricane force storm parked over central and eastern parts of the state for a few hours. What made that storm unique compared to any other severe weather event that's moved through the area?
Well, we had a couple of combinations. We had a very strong mesoscale convective vortex, an MCV, which, you would be familiar with. Everyone else would shake their head with the terminology. And so that was not all that uncommon with a mesoscale convective system,
right?
An MCS, which is just a large, if you look at satellite and you'll just see like a big giant mushroom of clouds that encompass an entire state. That would be a mesoscale convective system. And it's not uncommon to have one of these mesoscale convective vortexes, which if you looked at the radar loop that night, you were seeing it spinning.
Sure.
That was that vortex. It was very, very strong in comparison to most. And we had that night, you have to remember, before the storm, most people probably remember this, the wind was very strong from the east. The system was coming in from the west, so the upper level winds above our heads were from the west. That is 180 degrees of shear. And we had 100-mile-per-hour wind speeds up around, say, 15,000 feet. So we had very strong directional shear, plus we had a layer of very dry air. So everyone, when you get out of the shower in the morning, knows that evaporation is a cooling process. And so that convective vortex, really in many ways, was able to develop a rear inflow jet back behind it. And because the system, to me, was moving so slowly, that whole system, really was to our north, say along Highway 200. So it was northern Burleigh County, then northern Stutzman County, then northern Barnes County, then northern Cass County, moved into Minnesota, around Norman County in many ways. It was a fairly, a lot of folks got a lot of wind, don't get me wrong, but it was probably, a 20 to 30 mile per hour, maybe even smaller than that, part of that really intense wind. I've been up through that area several times this week, and it's always, you drive through a slot and there's just massive damage, and then you drive on the other slide where the wind was still strong but more tolerable. I tell you, if you want to get into the weeds, and if you're on X, formerly known as Twitter, look up my account. I'm just at Daryl Ritchison, but a former employee of mine, James Hyde, who's now the Mesonet director in Maryland, very proud of him, wrote this very nice summary that, even if some of it goes over your head, will really in many ways describe to you from a meteorological perspective what really happened and why, a lot of people have heard this term of a wake low, why this scenario really wasn't a wake low.
And what's his handle on X if people want to find him?
It's WX Medler. So WX is weather, so it's Weather Medler. But if you look at mine, he tagged me in it.
Okay.
Which was very kind of him to do. I was hoping he would write something.
Yeah.
Because he had a little bit more free time than we did here.
Well, we're coming up on the bottom of the hour, so we have to take a quick break. But if you have any questions for Daryl, myself, or for Bridgette, give us a call, 701-293-9000. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
So we were very lucky with our 20 acres of wheat on our Here We Grow field. That is wheat that is the Rolls variety from Peterson Farm Seed, and our wheat still looks really good. So people may make fun of poverty grass, but by God, it withstood this storm very, very well. So I'm happy with that. If we needed it sprayed by air instead of by ground, we could call Higher Drone Service from Leonard. Matthew and Eleanor are ready at your service to take care of fields that you can't get into. Maybe you want to do fungicide and not run down crops. So check things out with Higher Drone Service, Heuer. And Daryl Ritchison is our guest today. He's the state climatologist. Daryl spends a tremendous amount of time in the winter educating folks all over the region. I try not to call him in the winter months because I know his hectic speaking schedule, but I got to see him one day in Grand Forks. He was kind enough to help me out with a little project. I'd been asked to take the mascot from the Northern Cass High School with me to some events. And Daryl, we've got a picture of him. Daryl was happy to do so. He greeted our little Jaguar, and things were going well until the Jaguar got out of hand. But Daryl always kept his composure. So if you can show that second picture, Addison, yes, it got out of hand. And if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Acres TV, you can see how well Daryl manages to never lose his cool as a weather guy.
By the way,
we
if
do have
Bridgette gives
callers.
you a wild animal, don't trust her. And that thing just absolutely attacked me. I barely got out of there with my life.
It was amazing. We do have a caller. Mike is holding to visit and ask a question with Daryl. Mike, go ahead.
Hi, Daryl. I just have a question. I've been a real skeptic on this LRC. I was wondering if you could even, I don't know if you dare tell the truth or not, but I can't imagine you would think there's anything to that LRC. I mean, it's so broad and basic that, I mean, you can always say, might chance of storms, and if they get a storm somewhere, well, I did cover that, but yeah. I just can't imagine people paying for that.
And Mike, I'm gonna chime in here real quick in defense of the LRC. And Daryl, you
I'd like you can never let me finish when I talk.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I just want to know if Daryl would be able to comment on something like that. You know, he's been around the loop, and I can't imagine him thinking that would be the way to go. If it was so good, everybody'd be using it. So appreciate your answer, and either way, thank you.
All right, go ahead, Daryl.
I will just say I do not know enough about it to make a really decent comment on it.
Okay, well, and that's fair. And, Mike, in regards to the LRC, is it perfect? No. I mean, weather forecasting is not perfect to begin with. But if you check, the LRC is the number one. It was ranked number one in hurricane forecasting over the last 2 years. That comes from, it's better than NOAA. It's better than, there's a company out in Barcelona. I mean, so the LRC is ranked number one in hurricane forecasting. And in regards, Mike, when you said, well, if it was that good, everybody be using it. And there's not, I mean, the word is just starting to get out with the LRC over the last few years. So give it time, give it 10 years, give it 15 years. And as more research goes into this, it's going to be a very effective way to forecast weather. Again, it's not perfect, but weather forecasting never has been either. I wish it could be, but then we'd be out of a job. AI would be taking care of everything.
Oh, AI is taking care of a lot of meteorological jobs
they
these
are.
days.
I know.
It's tough business to be young in nowadays,
right?
Because of that.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, that's it's fair to have an opposition, Mike, and we appreciate your call. Bridgette, you had a few things.
I did. So in listener questions, one of them was, okay, guys, we're looking at potential for tornado activity again tonight. And is there a way to rate the probability of that? I mean, Daryl just illustrated that in 1975, we had a week's worth of bad weather. Is that something that repeats itself very often?
A lot of people ask that question. A lot of people have asked me that question, about last Friday. And it's always, and Dean and I, even off air, had, briefly discussed this too, is, it's really hard to do statistics with the atmosphere because the atmosphere is a nonlinear chaotic system, so, but I did remind people that, every event is different, but what happened last Friday night, a week ago today, was not all that much different than, say, what happened on July 4th, 1999. And most people remember that event from the big blowdown in the Boundary Waters. But that storm started in North Dakota. Fargo had a 100-mile-per-hour wind that night. We did not have a 100-mile-per-hour wind last Friday night here in Fargo. Other spots did, but we didn't. Caused significant damage in Fargo. Back in, I do believe it was 1995, we had two very similar events, faster moving, so we didn't have a long duration of high wind, but we had two destructive derechos back-to-back on two consecutive nights. that went through North Dakota and western Minnesota, I can still see the evidence of those storms 30 years later. So how often does that type occur? We had a wake low, a more traditional wake low in southwestern North Dakota a week ago that would probably have been the big news story of the week had it not been for Friday, but it occurred in different spots. So, we usually get some form of straight line event most summers at some point. This one was much, much more severe than most. But the other thing is, and I've been mentioning this in a lot of my public talks, is the last 5 years have been on the dry side. And guess where most of our rain comes from in the summertime? Severe weather. If it wasn't for severe weather, I don't think we could do agriculture here. We would not get enough rain if it wasn't for the severe weather. So it's to me, an awful catch-22. We need the rain from the severe weather, but the severe weather causes crop damage, farm damage. Look at all the damage we had last Friday night. But that again is where a lot of our rainfall in the summer comes from, is this severe weather. You probably didn't get severe weather because severe weather is kind of most time relatively isolated. Again, it wasn't last Friday night, but your rain that really benefited you came from some severe weather elsewhere. So there's been severe weather events. Yeah, there's $10-15 million worth of damage. That's horrible. But there's $1 billion of crop production that was caused because we got the rain that night, which was really, really beneficial.
That's a good way. I've never looked at it that way, but that makes sense. Yeah.
Yep.
And so it's always, it's the oddity about living in our climate. I tease people in a lot of my talks that your ancestors, if you're of European descent, came here and got your 160 acres, and that's where you started from here. I go, your ancestors volunteered to go to the gulag in Siberia, because only Siberia in Eastern Europe, like Ukraine into Siberia, has the same climatic type as we do here in North Dakota, northern Minnesota. Getting down to 40 below, we had a station last winter at Endon get down to minus 47. That's it. Within 30 miles of that station last summer, one of our Endon stations hit 111. Those extremes, it's just weather. But again, and I understand that, but it only really happens two places on Earth, here and again, Siberia or far Eastern Europe. It's a very unique climate where extremes are normal. I was like, when are we going to have some normal weather, Daryl? I go, well, we have 3 of those a year, and then it's one extreme. Today, look at today. I mean, free air conditioning. It's almost cool outside. And then if Dean's forecast tomorrow is going to be right, which it will be, because Dean's never wrong.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be, flirting with 90 tomorrow. Those are we just get used to it here. But we do, honestly, we live in a very, very unique spot here on the planet here. And there's good with that uniqueness. And as we learned last Friday, there's bad with that uniqueness.
Yeah. Well, and we have another question from a listener. Do we think that the violent weather we've had lately is going to settle down? I don't think there's an expiration date on when our summer weather changes over, but is there a tradition that once we get to, say, August 15th, we're kind of past the point of concern for tornadoes or hail?
Well, probably the most damage that has occurred in Fargo, I do believe, just the city of Fargo and Moorhead, West Fargo, the metro here, probably in the last 25 years, I would guess, was the September huge hailstorm we had back in 2007. I think it was September 18th or 19th, in that range. That was $100 million in town. My house I live in, I know when the shingles were put up because of that hailstorm in September. I only mention that because that was pretty late in September, and it caused over $100 million worth of damage at Fargo. If it would have occurred today, it'd probably be $250 million. Of damage. So our season really doesn't end until October, to be honest. But Dean and I were talking about this off there. Really our peak severe season here is approximately from like June 10th to the July 10th, 15th. That 30-day window, if you look historically, has a very high percentage of our severe weather. And oddly, around Fargo-Moorhead, there's been several of them that have occurred on the summer solstice, which usually occurs on June 20th. It varies, of course, a little bit, including, of course, the famed Fargo tornado of 1957. So usually we get past mid-July. Yeah, we're going to see some severe weather. but we don't see it as frequently as we do, say, this time of year.
Right. And we have a listener question asking if derecho winds are predominantly from the west. And easy answer to that, or quick answer, is for the most part, west or northwest, you'll get your derecho winds, but generally from a westerly direction. Have you ever seen them from, let's say, a different, like an east or a southerly direction?
There was a really strange one several years ago off to our south that came from the east. And
Okay.
I can't remember the exact dates, but I just remember looking at it with my eyes wide open. Think of the emoji with the big eyes open. That was me going, wow, that was a little odd. It wasn't kind of barely met the definition of derecho, but it was very odd. But yeah, I mean, a vast majority of them, because we live in the westerly belts globally,
Right.
So it's always some westerly direction. And the one that I mentioned on the 4th of July is actually the night of July 3rd into July 4th of 1999. That started in southeastern North Dakota and went up to the boundary water. So, yeah, that's still west to east, but it was more southwest
To
to
northeast.
northeast.
Yeah.
It wasn't, but a lot of them are like what happened last Friday night, almost direct west-east.
Yeah. And let's hope we don't have to worry about that tonight.
Indeed.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not. Go ahead, Bridgette.
One last listener comment for you, Daryl. First of all, she said, I love that Daryl mentioned the July 4th, 1999 storm. I remember it well. Now, this is two-part. 1995, she said, I barely remember it. I was only about 10, but I think that was an overnight event. And then August of 2001 may have been another derecho event, could have been a 2-day event. Maybe either one of you remembers what that could have been.
We get something close to a derecho at least once most summers, and not all summers. And again, the last few years being dry again means we don't get severe weather. I speak at a lot of insurance conferences with insurance agents. And so in turn, they will ask me, so Daryl, this summer, what do you think is going to be for, insurance stuff? And that's why I'm there to speak. And I will tell them, well, I think it's going to be a dry summer. So guess what? Insurance losses will probably be low unless you get the one storm. Well, guess what? We had the one storm, last Friday, although this summer, it hasn't been quite as dry as some of the other ones going forward. So that's why, the 95 ones was back-to-back, 2001. There are other, straight line wind events that we had. And of course, it's like a winter. If you went into the ditch and got stuck and really had a bad time on a winter storm, that was the worst winter in history. And you'll always remember it as a really bad winter, even though it was maybe the lamest winter ever. Same thing about summers. It was always the worst summer if you happen, to get damage at your place. It's just human nature, and what we remember weather-wise. It usually has to sadly be some tragedy or something bad happen to you as an individual.
Right. Now, so far, Daryl, and I had a listener email me this question, and I'll toss it to you because I kind of got a chuckle out of it. But it's been so far in a more active season than we had last year. And like you said, it's been a little wetter. I think our rainfall is pretty close to normal for this time of the year, where last year we were well below normal. Does this mean a more active winter is ahead because we're seeing a little more active spring and summer?
There is really no correlation from one season to the next.
Do you hear that a lot, though? People try to correlate.
All the time. And a lot of it, I think, still comes back to 1936. 1936 was the coldest winter on record, and 1936 was the hottest summer on record. And so the old timers, when I was a kid, in the 60s and 70s, sorry, I'm that old.
You're aging yourself,
I
Daryl.
am
Come on, you
aging
don't look that
myself.
old.
But it was always all of my parents, everyone I knew grew up through there. And it was always, it's a dry summer, then it's going to get the next extreme the other way. But if you're going to play with the weather statistics, there really is no correlation, or something very, very weak. I mean, you just couldn't use it statistically to forecast one season to the next.
Gotcha.
But it's a good question.
All
I'm
right.
glad they come up.
It is, and it's and I hear it quite a bit, and that's why I said I got a chuckle out of it, is because a lot of people think there is a correlation, and there's not.
No, and people remember where there was a correlation. That year it worked.
Sure.
Why? And going back to 1975 again. another reason I bring up 1975 in a lot of my talk, especially when I'm talking about water, when I'm talking, the diversion or the Red River Valley Water Project, bringing water in to this area, is that in 1975, if I could take my DeLorean back in time to 1975, and as I'm helping sandbag Fargo and West Fargo, and I would say to these people, hey, by the way, next summer, the Red River and the Cheyenne are going to go dry. Well, they would have politely picked me up, taken me maybe to Jamestown, and said, Daryl, maybe you take a break. But that is exactly what happened. 1975 summer super flood, worst one on record. If that happened today, it'd probably be a $20 billion disaster because it was $1 billion in 1975.
And there's nothing saying it can't happen.
Yeah, and it probably will happen at some point again in the future. But the thing is, the next summer, the Red River had no water in it. It pretty much went dry. It stopped flowing the very next year. So we went, that's again the extremes where we live and why you need a diversion and the Red River Water Supply Project in this area, because it's a really, a crazy climate that we live in.
Yeah, no doubt. Like you said, outside of Siberia and parts of Europe, this is
it.
This is the place to live if you forecast weather.
Oh, I love meteorologists going, oh, you're from Fargo. You're so lucky because of, the weather is so different all the time. And I said, yeah, you should come up. Oh, I don't want to actually live there, but I'm envious that you do.
Right?
It's always weird comments.
Well, Daryl, want to thank you for joining us today. It's always a pleasure having you on.
Oh, this was a lot of fun.
And again, if you have any questions that you didn't get to ask, shoot us email weather@flagfamily.com or ag@flagfamily.com, and we can pass those along to Daryl. So, Bridgette, do you have any last-minute questions before we sign off here?
I got everybody's questions in. One last comment. I'm trying to use your information to judge if I better get my boat out of the water at the lake or not. So people are making choices right now.
I would say that might not be a bad idea in Lakes Country as those storms roll in later tonight. So for Bridgette, myself, and Daryl, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Don't go anywhere. The Jay Thomas Show, it's coming up next.